maybe you're like me. And like I said earlier, I want to be wrong. And so when I started hearing from the States about these books in libraries and what parents were saying about these explicit materials, I thought, oh, that's kind of like, is that a conspiracy theory? Is that really a right wing overreaction? Like, am I,
I had the
am
same
I, am,
reaction. This is all a little bit too, it's a little bit too much. It just sounds a little bit too out there. People are
yeah,
exaggerating.
yeah. And maybe it's just the religious extremists and hypersensitive to these things. But then I wouldn't make comment on it. Then I actually started looking at the books and looking at the titles and then confirming where those books are held. And Pierre's been an incredible resource for Canadians who want to take an honest look at this. In any case, here's what this panel has to say. And there's some connection to the Waterloo region um, in this because there's one of the people here is from Waterloo, if I'm not mistaken. So we'll roll the
Yep.
clip.
Fortunate, it comes back to some of the strategies. I think it was Anita that talked about the playbook, and these are some of the strategies to create fear, to create discomfort, and I think one of the things that we all need to remember through this is there's a purpose behind this, and it's not always the purpose that seems to be on the surface. There's often hidden purposes behind why we're seeing such behavior and such actions being taken.
Anita, have you had reports of this? We've talked about BC and Ontario. Are there other places that are experiencing this?
Well, Manitoba, has had the same kind of thing. And when we were talking about influencing elections and so on, Manitoba School Library Association has done some quite brilliant advocacy, actually, of getting their members to actually to ask candidates questions, because they're very concerned not only about provincial elections, but about local school board elections. And I see that as a vulnerability, quite frankly. I think a lot of just as a citizen, I think that there are a lot of school board trustees who, may have been around a while and the name is familiar and they keep getting reelected. I don't think people look very critically at their school board candidates, and maybe this situation is a good reason to really have a close look at why people are running. I'm also, Graham has talked about moral panic and instilling fear. And, it's the tactics that people have used of, they use this term age appropriateness, and they try to represent books that, may represent characters of different gender identities or sexual orientations as sexual content. And it's not. I mean, misrepresenting representation as sexual content is a tactic. And of course, other parents are fearful of that. I mean, they care for their kids. They don't want their kids reading something that isn't age appropriate. And it's really those parents and people that we need to support, I think. I think we have to stand up to the censors, but we also have to try to calm down the situation and reassure people. I was just today, actually, I saw an article come out about research from an organization called Every Library, which is a U.S. Organization of library, it's advocating for libraries, and they're very highly reputable people in this organization. And they did a survey about attitudes. And, they found that the radical opinions of the people who are, challenging the books are, according to this survey, not representative of the general US population, which is reassuring to me. In this survey, 92% of parents and grandparents and guardians trust libraries to curate appropriate books and materials. 90% of parents are comfortable having their children select their own materials. 96% believe their kids are safe in the library. 83% agree that libraries know what books children would love. And the executive director of the association said this survey shows how out of touch politically motivated book bannings and censorship groups are. They're out of touch, but they're powerful. And they're powerful politically. And, we really need to be very vigilant about this.
Politically motivated book banning. So
Radical
what are people
opinions.
against here? What
Yeah.
hang on. What are people against here? People are speaking out against sexualized material in books. And she called it politically motivated book banning. Now, last week I was talking about how Drag Queen Story Hour proclaimed that queer theory is a political identity, and lady here just went and pointed that out again. LGBTQIA+, whatever you want to call it. This is a political movement. Why does your sexuality, that's not political, but she said it. This is politically motivated. Beyond that, she also said the radical opinions of people challenging these books. Now, is it a radical opinion that prepubescent minors do not have a sexuality and do not need to be exposed to it? Not long ago, we understood that exposing young people to inappropriately sexualized material harmed their development. This is a developmentally inappropriate thing to do. And so is that a radical opinion? You have to ask yourself this question. So the Center for Free Expression, I think later on we'll show these clips, is an interesting name, a title of this organization, because this is the same organization that supports banning parents, removing parents with these so-called radical opinions. What they're talking about, these radical opinions, is they want to shut down the opinions. And what they mean by radical opinions are the opinions that are exposing what we're doing. The opinions are disagreeing with what we're saying. In there, this lady spoke about what is appropriate? What is age appropriate? What is that? What is age appropriate? And I've heard that before. I've heard that many, many, many times before. We know what is age appropriate. We have known in the past, and suddenly we don't know. This is gaslighting. We know what's age appropriate. The idea of so this is a Mott and Bailey as well. And so, I've heard this at other school boards where they say they're only complaining about LGBT books. They're only complaining about these LGBT books. And so if they have a problem with the sexual content in LGBT books and they don't mention it, they don't have an issue with sexualized content in heterosexual books, it's because they're bigots. So do you have a problem with LGBT? That is the Mott. Well, no, of course I don't have a problem with LGBT. Well, then you don't have a problem with these books. That's the Bailey. They shoehorn on this sexualized content. Now, what they're actually doing, this is on purpose. They're not providing this sexual content within heterosexual material because you can use this Mott and Bailey. Now, nobody is saying being gay is wrong. What we're saying is sexualized material is wrong. It just so happens that it's consistently put in books that are LGBT tagged. This is a problem. And the fact that parents bringing this up are being called radical, or they are having radical opinions. One more thing I wanted to point out is, well, a couple more things. Deb Oldfield. Hi, Deb. How are you doing? From the DDSB, not too long ago, with the approval of the genderqueer book at the DDSB, had the same kind of the same kind of speaking points. We're saying, well, what do we mean by age appropriate? Who can really make that assessment? Are we really ones to go through all the books and make those assessments about what's appropriate? And are you a bigot because you really don't want to be looking at this book? So this is not the first time we hear this. And there was another thing not long ago, a couple episodes ago, we talked about this MP, was it an MP and an MPP who went to the Legislative Assembly, and he read excerpts from the book Eleanor and Park in BC. Yep. And he was stopped from reading this book because it was too graphic to be spoken out loud in the public forum, which is the Legislative Assembly. It was not appropriate for the ears of adults. If it is not appropriate for the ears of adults, and this is a book that was marked for 11-year-olds, why on earth are we being called radicals for challenging that these should be available to children? And this was a book that was taken from the schools in BC. Now, this is, again, we'll have a discussion with Pierre Barnes, and he'll go through his website, because he'll be able to show you which schools have which books. And not only that, but he actually has the books on PDF format, so you can actually go read the content too. Because this is the highest level of gaslighting. These adults in front of us in this panel, either they have not read the books themselves and are just saying these are extremists, which is a possibility, although they're librarians. And so I imagine they have read the books and they're lying. So it's one of the two. Neither one of those options are good. That's what I got out of this 3-minute clip.
Yeah. I picked up from the radical opinions piece, and there's two observations I have here. One is that the speaker moves into this grandiose logical fallacy about, and I can't remember the name of the fallacy, but it's basically saying that 97% of people agree, and so that means that all of these people who have radical opinions are just a minority.
Not all the books are in all the schools, first of all, and not all people responding to this are actually reading these books that we're talking about, because they're not all books all the time in all the schools.
The survey had nothing to do with controversial books. It had to do with people's perceptions
all
of
books.
The library.
Yeah.
Okay, so people's perceptions of the library here demonstrates very high trust. That means that we can select whatever we want without criticism because most people trust us. Well, maybe that's a good reason not to trust you, because this seems like an obvious lie.
Yeah.
The other thing that I heard again, and I heard this during my school trustee campaign last year. I ran here in Ottawa. My friend Chanel, our friend Chanel Fall, ran as well, and we heard from the left that questions about our integrity and motivation for running. Right? We got to be careful about this. What did she say? Hidden purposes. Concerned about why people would run for school board.
Yeah, people are not thinking critically about the candidates. They're not thinking critically about the candidates. What does critically mean? To a critical theorist, critically means something very different to the average person, where it just means thinking widely about the topic.
Yeah. Now, as we were going through all this, a tweet that Chanel put up this week reminded me of what exactly they're talking about. She said, I didn't realize I was gay until, I think she said 14 or 15.
I said 13, 14 around then, yeah.
13, 14, something like that, because we never talked about it. It wasn't part of our daily conversation. It wasn't relevant. We were kids. We played outside. We engaged in activities. We did what kids do. And the sentiment there is like, why are we introducing these concepts to kids that are so young when they don't have to think about it? Why are we taking their childhood away from them? Why are we forcing them?
There's an answer. The answer is that this ideology, this manner of thinking, really truly believes that there is such a thing as the mature minor, and everybody is born with a sexuality, and we are being irresponsible when we are not exposing them as early as possible to allow them the natural sexual right to associate with and identify with and explore the sexuality from the earliest possible ages. Like that's the answer to that question. And people really need to start realizing it. I mean, so this I found particularly interesting as well, because these are librarians in Canada, and although I was aware about these books in Canada, these books exist in America as well, and I was aware also this summer a number of leaks from the American Library Association of librarians purposefully keeping secrets and lying to the public about the books in the schools and really promoting these sexualized books, saying that they're not sexualized, people don't know what they're talking about, it's fine, and then doing it on purpose. Like there was a few leaks of Zoom meeting kind of things where they knew that this was sexualized, but it had to be done because it was very, very important to promote LGBT, et cetera, et cetera. But not only that the American Library Association lead, I can't remember her name, but is a self-declared queer Marxist as well. So the queer Marxism is really deep within the American Library Association. But I didn't realize that. I'm quite certain there's a very heavy bent towards that within the Canadian librarians as well, which is, they're definitely more quiet about it, but sometimes people tell you things without telling you, and I think this little video is kind of telling you that.
Yeah. Okay, so we have a longer clip from the same video. I'm going to post a link actually to this Center for Free Expression, and the irony is here. Uh, here's a
have
group
free expression.
basically saying you can't listen to these extremists. Their opinions are completely invalid,
Well, silence these
and
people.
politically
Silence
motivated.
them. Free expression.
Unbelievable. And you have some timestamps that we're going to jump to a couple of clips.
Yeah, I think they're. I hope they're correct. Let's find out. Okay, so if we go to 9 minutes, please. Just to point out, this is a Father David Todor video. He did a breakdown of Dr. Graham Shantz. Mostly, he only focused on Dr. Graham Shantz, who is the assistant director of the WRDSB, the Waterloo Region District School Board. And it's a great little video. He doesn't go over all the different speakers in the longer video, but I pulled out some bits and pieces because they were relevant to us here in Ontario. So yeah, there was a 9-minute mark-ish.
All right, I'm going to start in a sec. We're going to have we're overdue to have Father David on the show, by the way. So we'll I imagine I'll connect with him in the next couple of days.
So your question's a great one. Why are we seeing this friction start to happen? And I think fundamentally it's based in the fear of change, and the fear of losing control or having ideas being challenged by other individuals as well. I was doing some reading once and heard a presentation by an individual called Julie Sweetland, who has a PhD and spoke very eloquently on the concept of moral panic. And that's what I'm seeing happen. And the concept around moral panic is that stories get exaggerated to create reaction, to change perception, or provide misperception of situations. And that's what we're seeing in our schools. People are raising questions because of things they've heard. And they're not usually based on any truth whatsoever, but it creates an emotional outrush, an outpour. And Anita spoke really well to how organized groups are, individuals and groups. And I would suggest that there is an active attempt to create a moral panic so people respond in different ways.
So I think that was sort of a precursor or a conclusion really to the previous video that we saw. They're really just talking about parents speaking out. These parents with radical opinions are causing a moral panic, which is this
is gaslighting too. It's number one, or one of the top traits of narcissistic abuse is minimizing people's concerns.
Yeah. Yeah. We can go to minute 14:30, please.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, perfect. And thanks so much for the opportunity to respond to this, because in the Ontario context, school boards are required to have selection and deselection guidelines in place. So maybe what I'll do is morph the question a little further and suggest not only should they be adequate, they should be robust processes that they have in place and well documented. And I would also say well communicated to the community. Organizations such as the one Anita works with and many others can be huge resources to school boards, as well as the internal staff and expertise that they have in making sure that these processes are in place and quite transparent to the community. What's interesting, Jim, is the experiences of those that I talk with is the challenges aren't often happening through the formal processes that have been developed. And I think it was Tammy that said this at the beginning of our discussion, that it's the circumventing of those processes that is being done. It's being done in very political forums. It's being done in sort of media-based forums. And they're not, and organizations and individuals aren't actually using the formal processes for the very reasons that we spoke to. People need to read the text. They need to be able to explain why that doesn't represent the values of the organization. And as we all know, that's often very hard because in a majority of cases, our librarians have done just outstanding jobs making sure the text represent the communities we serve.
can I just say, this is another example of speaking in a certain tone of voice, keeping it low, slowing down your cadence, and having a very reassuring tone. We're not doing anything wrong. We're not doing anything wrong. It's those people. It's those extremists. Those parents are circumventing the procedures. They're circumventing the normal way of doing business, which is an outright lie. It is an outright lie. Because I know for a fact that I know parents from that region who attend the school board meetings, who use those procedures, who write emails, who express their concern in reasonable writing, reasonable speech, and are shut down. Just recently, David Todor read from a book at one of the school board meetings. So they are using the normal procedures.
Yeah, this is just to paint your enemy. I mean, my head just about exploded because this is a representative from Waterloo who's talking about parents' circumventing process in the same week as Carolyn Brzezinski's victory in court, where the systems that are supposed to work for, and now I'm not talking in that calm voice. These systems are supposed to work, right? Like, parents want to be listened to.
Yeah.
These concerns we want to have heard. We want to have legitimate public discussions about these things. And what does the board do? They shut down a teacher. They take away her democratic right under the Charter of Rights and Freedoms to speak to the government, agents of the state. They take away her career and destroy her reputation. Now, and then they say that parents aren't following the process.
Yeah.
So my not so quiet words here are, these are fucking hypocrites.
I couldn't agree more.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. So we have another timestamp at 17:30.
Experiencing it saddens me. We have staff feeling the same way as well. We have librarians that have dedicated their life, they have trained, they have expertise, they're professionals, and in some cases they're being personally attacked. We have trustees that have voiced support of ministry direction, support of the Human Rights Code, and they become personally attacked as well. And it's a sad situation when truly our libraries should be celebrated. They are amazing learning environments. They truly are filled with stories of the world. And when you see students, and I still in my role get to see students engage with library collections, they come out of the library with the biggest smiles on their faces. They love being in the library. They love learning in that environment. It's just unfortunate that some of the challenges that we're facing currently put a damper on that and actually impact people at a very personal.
I thought it couldn't get worse.
This is exactly like Blonde Bigot's post, though. It's, it's the tables are being turned, right?
Yeah.
So it's the DARVO. That's what it is. It's DARVO because, and that's,
Deny,
why can I never...
attack, and reverse victim and offender order.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So the point is
it
here
wasn't
is that
me, it was you.
Yeah,
you're the one causing all the problems.
Yeah, they're calling parents radicals for saying, please don't expose our children to sex at an inappropriate age with these materials that some of them are too graphic to even speak in the legislative assembly, right? And people like to shut down. Meeting. Or a school board meeting, right? They're inappropriate for adult ears, but fine for kids. They're complaining about this, and when they complain about this, they get shut down. And so, the parents, they're not using, and then they protest, right? And so when you have nothing left, you protest. And so, these parents, they're circumventing the normal ways of doing business. Look at them. So we're gaslighting them here. We're DARVOing here. And then on top of that, when when people are en masse really writing you letters, going to school board meetings, raising alarm, getting upset because you're not
Having
listening.
national protests.
Yeah. And then you start saying, well, they're attacking librarians. They're attacking librarians. They're attacking us. They're attacking us.
Yeah.
No, what people are doing is they're saying, you can't do this anymore.
Boundaries. And the people who play the DARVO game, who play the minimization game, the gaslighting game, and the minute they face boundaries, they perceive that as an attack. It's a narcissistic injury. They can't possibly be questioned because they're so morally superior and righteous. And that feels like an attack to them. But really, it's just, okay, like, it's a situation where a person with, this seems to be the theme for the episode, cannot be wrong.
Yeah.
Right? They are wrong, and make mistakes, but people and institutions who operate in this fashion will never acknowledge responsibility, either personal or institutional responsibility, for the response that they're getting. And, speaking of personal attacks, again, in the same week as the judgment, conveying that Carolyn Brzezinski's defamation lawsuit can persist and go through to full court hearings because of what? Personal attacks. From the institutions who are leveraging their power to attack parents. Like, what are we at now in Pitt Meadows? They're going to call the police when parents are strongly objecting to these inappropriate behaviors.
Well, you have to ask yourself here, like, who does these children, right? They're not. There's this weird way of looking at children as belonging to the state now, and although that's not said overtly, that's kind of what they're getting at, is that we're perfectly entitled to expose children to whatever we feel is necessary. And I come from a family of primary school teachers. I've been around a lot of primary school teachers in general. They're not all teachers, but there is, and I've noticed a type of mentality amongst many teachers that they know what's best. They know what's best for all children, right? And you cannot convince them otherwise, that they just know what's best. And I get that with these people on the panel too, is that they are the knowledgeable people who know what's best for your children, and they forget. It's almost like but even in the past, even though the teachers in my family and so on and so forth, they know everything and they know what's best, at least they understood that the children weren't their children. But we've lost that now somehow. Somehow these children now belong to the state, they belong to the school, they belong to the region, and they're no longer the family's children. So parents should have a say, because that's what being a responsible parent is. It's our responsibility as parents to make sure that what we're exposing our children to is appropriate for them. And when it is not, a good parent will
we have an obligation to protect our kids.
Yes. Yeah. And that's what these parents are doing. They have discovered that there are things that are inappropriate for their children, and they're saying, I'm sorry, but this is not going to fly. And the response from they're not their parents. These people on the panel are not their parents, right? They're in most cases, they're kind of strangers, really. They're not related to them. They're just these people who happen to be leaders of institutions, not listening to the actual parents of these children. That alone should tell you something about the mentality of the people on this panel.
Yeah. It isn't just not listening, right? It's flipping the script and saying, like,
it's pushing them out.
You're wrong. You're wrong. You're not allowed to have those opinions. Those are extremist views. Well,
your disagreement with us is an attack.
Yeah. Unreal.
So the next timestamp is 1740. This is the last one.
1740?
Oh, sorry. No, 1940.
We've had experiences in Ontario where some of those books from those lists in the US are discussed at school boards. In some cases, the books aren't even in our collection, and people are concerned that they are. So there's a lack of knowledge and understanding. And in other cases, scripts are read from those books. But when questioned further, individuals, it becomes very obvious that they actually haven't even read the book themselves. right? They're only reading a script that had either been provided to them or provided through some means to them. So I think that really illustrates the impact that U.S. Policies and practices are having in the Canadian sector as well.
Well, some more of that American MAGA style influence. We've been hearing a lot about that recently. So what did he say? He said, number one, parents are complaining about many books that aren't even on our collection. Well, as Shannon just said, we'll make sure that you know exactly which books in which schools are in which collections shortly, so that you can discuss that with the schools. And he also said that many of the parents haven't even read the books that they're complaining about, and obviously the American style influence.
If they're reading from passages that are describing a father raping a daughter,
which is one of the books available in Canadian schools,
or reading like the Conservative Party member in provincial legislature did in Victoria a couple of weeks ago, reading from the books, and you're reading verbatim from the books. Sorry, like the rest of the book doesn't disqualify the passages being read.
Well, the arguments here, I've heard this again from the DDSB this summer, or this spring. The argument is, oh, well, these are just excerpts from the book. You don't get the full context. These are just LGBT stories. And so if you're just taking excerpts and you're not getting the full context, then you're a bigot, basically. And this is the argument that this man is making as well. So, for example, Pierre Bonds on his website, not all the book is in PDF format. There's like excerpts from the book. Now you can go buy the book yourself. You can buy it on Amazon or whatever, but it's telling
he's bought them all. Yeah.
Well, because he had to make the PDFs, but the whole book is not in PDF format. It's really the bits that are of concern, right? To give you highlights, but the whole page is in there. So yes, these are excerpts, but like Shannon said, you don't need to read the whole book to understand that it is a problem. Because, for example, even with these excerpts, one book might have 20 pages of excerpts out of a 120-page book, right? So no, it's not the whole book, but the book is still a problem, regardless of whether you've read the whole book or not. The book is still a problem because it is containing, extremely explicit sexualized language. Oftentimes there are images. So these are sexually explicit images of adults engaging in all kinds of activities that are not for minors at all. Some stuff that I didn't even know about until I was in my 20s.
One of the books that I maybe it was Father David who was reading from was giving tips to teenage boys on how to navigate Grindr.
Yeah,
Grindr is a gay dating and male hookup site for adults.
Yeah,
and if I'm okay, again, I could be mistaken, but there was like negotiating like tricks, right? A trick is a paid prostitution is a trick.
But again, the argument with that is that kids are going to do it anyway. And because they're going to do it anyway, we have to teach them how to do it safely, right? So we're not going to tell them not to do it because that's moralizing. So we have to teach them how to do it safely. So that's the arguments behind these things. That's the whole Mott and Bailey, you're just being a bigot sort of thing. And the other one on top of that is this, I found it particularly interesting, this USA influence thing. Now, I think by that, what he means is all of those videos of parents going to school board meetings, reading from the books, and then they go viral, right? Because these are egregious. A lot of the things that are in there are quite egregious. And Canada started doing that more and more. We've seen, like we had on our show, Father Todor did that recently. I don't think we had that on our show. And more people are doing that because it is impactful. It is getting the point out. But he is pushing back saying, oh, this is just that alarmist stuff again, because it's this American influence. People don't know what they're talking about. They're just creating panic.
It's right out of, the federal NDPs and especially the federal Liberals are playing this card that it's MAGA influence from the States and that this is just a ripoff of American politics and we've got American right-wing extremist politics coming into Canada.
Well, they're getting it from us. That's the crazy thing. When it comes to this queer theory, when it comes to the comprehensive sexuality education, they're getting it from us. Thanks for watching to the end. Please consider liking and subscribing so we can bring you more content like this. And here's a couple suggestions you might like.